Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're calling it Living in God's Rhythm in 2024, kind of a fun title.
Yeah.
And we're going to be taking a look at Leviticus chapters 24 through 27.
Okay.
And I was looking at this and I thought, wow, this stuff's really relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Even if someone isn't, super religious or whatever.
Right.
That thing about the lamp, that has to be kept continuously burning in the tabernacle.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that look like in today's world?
Well, it's a great metaphor, for spiritual practice, right?
Okay.
So the lamp burning continuously kind of reminds us that we need to be constantly, kind of like working on our spiritual lives.
Right.
And the fuel for the lamp is pure olive oil.
Yeah.
So that represents like devotion, purity,
Yeah.
Offering the best of ourselves to kind of keep that inner light burning.
And how does that, translate today? What does that look like for you?
Well, I think it's different for everyone you know.
Right.
But for me, it's about setting aside time for reflection, prayer meditation, spending time in nature, connecting with something larger than myself.
Yeah.
Those are the things that keep my inner light burning, so to speak.
Yeah, I hear you. And like connecting with nature is huge.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me too. And like being creative, there's something about like making something that sparks that joy.
Absolutely.
But I'll be honest, like consistency is a struggle.
I think that's true for most of us.
Yeah.
Life is so busy,
Yeah.
and there are always so many demands on our time and attention.
It is, isn't it?
It's easy to let those things slip.
It is. It's like, you have all these good intentions.
Yeah.
And then the week just takes over and then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't been doing those things I was going to do.
Yeah, you got to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Just like the Israelites had to be intentional about replenishing the oil in those lamps,
Right.
We have to make a conscious effort to replenish our own spiritual reserves.
So true. So true. Okay, so let's talk about the next few chapters because this was the part that really blew my mind.
Okay.
This concept of the year of Jubilee,
Oh, yeah.
which happened every 50 years.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the year of Jubilee was basically like a massive reset button for the Israelites.
Wow.
All debts were forgiven, slaves were set free, and land that had been sold was returned to its original families.
That is a huge reset.
It was meant to prevent extreme wealth inequality and ensure a level of fairness and justice in society.
It makes you think, could we apply some of those principles today?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, think about the challenges we face with wealth inequality and lack of social mobility. Could we maybe adapt some of these ancient ideas?
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I mean, a literal jubilee might not be practical in today's world,
Right.
but the values behind it, debt relief, social equity restoration, those are definitely relevant.
Maybe we could look at things like debt forgiveness programs or initiatives that promote economic fairness.
Or even policies that address systemic barriers,
Exactly. It's not about copying the past,
Yeah.
but about finding inspiration in it for solving the problems of today.
I love that. And, speaking of resetting,
Yeah.
Leviticus also talks about rest.
Oh, yeah.
And not just for people, but for the land itself. And I thought, wow, that is so countercultural in 2024.
It really is.
But also so needed.
Absolutely. The concept of Sabbath, ceasing from work, is woven throughout Leviticus.
Yeah.
Every 7 years, they had a Sabbath year where they didn't cultivate the land. They let it rest and replenish.
And how does that work, in today's world?
Well, it's a challenge, right?
Uh-huh.
We're so used to being on all the time,
Right.
constantly producing, achieving, consuming.
Like glorify busyness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the principle of Sabbath is about recognizing that we're not machines.
Yeah.
We need time to recharge, to reconnect with ourselves, with nature, with whatever we consider sacred.
I've learned that lesson the hard way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I pushed myself way too hard once, ignoring all the signs of burnout.
Oh, no?
Ended up getting sick and couldn't work for weeks.
Yeah.
It was like a forced Sabbath.
Yeah. The body has a way of making you rest if you don't listen to it.
It does. It really does. So Leviticus talks about holiness and rest, but then it gets into this idea of consequences. In chapter 26, it talks about how obedience leads to blessings and disobedience leads to hardship.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's pretty straightforward.
It is.
But it also makes sense,
Yeah.
Our choices have consequences, whether we think about it in spiritual terms or just natural consequences.
Absolutely. Leviticus highlights the power of choice and personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not about a God who's rewarding and punishing, but about recognizing that our actions have ripple effects.
Right.
When we align our choices with our values, it creates a sense of well-being.
Right.
But when we stray from those values, it creates disharmony and ultimately suffering.
It's like we're the authors of our own stories in a way.
Exactly. We have the freedom to choose our path.
Right.
But we also have to be willing to face the consequences of those choices.
So what happens when we mess up? We all make mistakes, you know? Well, is there room for redemption?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even in the face of hardship and consequences, Leviticus emphasizes that redemption is always possible.
Okay.
Chapter 26 actually ends with a reminder of God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
Highlighting his faithfulness and willingness to forgive.
It's like a message of hope.
It is. It's about second chances.
But what does turning back to God look like in today's world?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Is it about specific rituals, or is it more about aligning our actions with our values?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah. Okay.
But at its core, it's about recognizing our mistakes, taking responsibility for them, and making amends.
Right.
It's about seeking forgiveness, offering forgiveness,
Right.
and striving to live a more purposeful life.
Okay, so we've talked about holiness, rest, and the consequences of our choices.
Yeah.
But there's more angels there. Leviticus also gets into vows and offerings in chapter 27, and it seems like there's a strong emphasis on the importance of commitment,
Absolutely, like keeping our word.
In a world where words can feel so cheap,
Right.
this chapter reminds us of the power and importance of integrity.
Yeah, but how do we do that? I mean, how do we cultivate that sense of integrity, especially when we're so overcommitted,
It's tough, isn't it? We're constantly bombarded with demands on our time and attention.
Yeah.
I think it starts with being mindful of the commitments we make. Before you say yes to something, ask yourself, can I really honor this commitment?
That's a good one.
Without overextending myself or compromising my values.
And sometimes the answer is no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right? It's about knowing our limits.
It is. And it's about making choices that align with what truly matters to us. So true. Okay, so the last thing Leviticus talks about is tithing and offerings. And it emphasizes that everything belongs to God.
Right.
We're just stewards of his gifts.
Exactly.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Well, this idea of stewardship is really challenging, especially in a consumer culture like ours.
It is.
It's about shifting our perspective.
Yeah, right.
Instead of viewing things as possessions that we own, Leviticus encourages us to see them as gifts entrusted to our care. It's a shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance.
Okay.
Recognizing that we have enough to share and that true wealth lies in giving back.
So what does that look like practically?
I think it's about being mindful of our consumption.
Okay.
Using our resources wisely.
Right.
And finding ways to give back to our communities and to those in need.
It's about recognizing that interconnectedness. Right. Like we're all in this together.
We are.
So, wow. This has been such an eye-opening look at Leviticus so far. Who knew these ancient teachings on holiness, rest, generosity, and commitment could be so relevant to our lives in 2024?
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's like they offer a roadmap for navigating this crazy modern world.
I think so.
And finding a deeper sense of meaning and purpose.
Absolutely. And if I may add one final thought for this part of our deep dive.
Please.
Leviticus challenges us to ask ourselves. How are we managing the gifts we've been given? Are we using our time, talents, and resources in a way that honors our values and benefits others?
That's a powerful question.
It is. It's a question worth pondering as we continue our exploration.
It is, and we will continue our exploration on the next part of this deep dive.
Yeah. It really is a question that makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It's like it's so easy to get caught up in just like, the everyday stuff.
Right.
And kind of lose sight of that bigger picture.
Exactly.
Like what are we doing here?
Yeah, what's it all about?
Yeah. And I think that's what I appreciate about Leviticus is that it offers these like timeless principles, these guideposts to kind of help us navigate all this craziness.
I agree. And what's great about them is that they're adaptable. They're not like rigid rules.
Right.
They're more like guidelines that we can apply to our own lives.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
For example, take the principle of Sabbath rest.
Yeah.
It's not about observing it on a specific day or in a specific way.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to intentionally disconnect from work and technology and create space for rejuvenation.
So it's about finding that rhythm.
Exactly.
That balance, between action and contemplation.
Yeah.
Between striving and surrendering.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I think
Right.
living in God's rhythm that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating that life of intention and balance and purpose.
And recognizing that we're not human doings.
Right.
We're human beings.
We are.
And sometimes just being is enough.
It is. It's about honoring those natural cycles, Yeah. Of activity and rest that are woven into creation.
Like the rising and setting of the sun.
Exactly.
The ebb and flow of the tides.
The seasons.
Yeah. And we're part of that.
We are.
It's like we're meant to flow with that rhythm.
I think so. It's a journey, though,
Uh-huh.
not a destination.
Right.
There are times when we'll fall out of sync.
Yeah.
Get caught up in the whirlwind of life.
Oh, yeah.
But the key is to keep coming back to those principles, those guideposts
Right.
that help us realign ourselves with that deeper rhythm.
Like finding our way back to center.
Exactly.
Back to that place of peace.
Yeah, that inner peace, that groundedness.
It's amazing to me that these ancient teachings from Leviticus, which were given to a specific people in a specific time and place,
Right.
are still so relevant today.
I know, it's remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
But when you think about it,
Yeah.
despite all the cultural and historical differences,
Right.
there are certain fundamental human needs and longings
Right.
that remain constant across time.
Like what?
The need for meaning, for connection, for purpose, for belonging.
Okay.
These are universal desires.
Yeah.
They
Right.
transcend any particular religious tradition.
So it's like there's this underlying human operating system
I love that.
that we all share.
Yeah.
And Leviticus is kind of like a guidebook
It is.
for how to live in harmony with that operating system.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that there's this deeper wisdom at play.
Yeah.
A wisdom that transcends our limited human understanding.
And when we tap into that wisdom,
Yes.
when we align ourselves with that rhythm, we open ourselves up to a life of, greater meaning and purpose.
Exactly.
And isn't that what we're all searching for?
I think so. To
Yeah.
live lives that feel meaningful and purposeful,
Yeah.
to make a positive impact on the world.
To leave it a little bit better than we found it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the teachings we've been exploring from Leviticus,
Yeah.
they offer a roadmap for doing just that. They remind us that true fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating wealth or power,
Right.
but from living a life of service, generosity, and integrity.
It's about recognizing that interconnectedness,
Yes.
Yep. Understanding that our actions have ripple effects.
Right.
And using our gifts and resources wisely.
It's about shifting from that mindset of scarcity to one of abundance.
Right.
Recognizing that we have enough to share.
Yeah.
And that true wealth lies in giving back.
This deep dive has really got me thinking, about how I'm living my life.
Yeah.
How I'm using my time and energy. What kind of legacy I want to leave behind.
That's the power of engaging with these ancient texts.
Yeah.
They invite us to step outside of our own limited perspectives.
Okay.
And see the world through a different lens. To consider new possibilities.
Right.
Reevaluate our priorities.
It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves.
It is.
Tapping into that source of wisdom and guidance that can help us navigate all the complexities of life.
Absolutely.
And find our way back to that rhythm.
That deeper rhythm that sustains us.
And it's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
It is. It's a journey of exploration and discovery.
Yeah.
The more we delve into these ancient teachings,
Uh-huh.
the more we uncover these layers of meaning and wisdom
Right.
that can really enrich our lives.
It's not about having all the answers.
No.
It's about embracing the questions,
Right.
the mysteries,
Uh-huh.
the journey.
The process of growth and transformation.
This has been so insightful.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on Leviticus
Good. I'm glad.
and its relevance for us today.
It's been a pleasure exploring these texts with you.
Yeah.
I always find it fascinating to see how these ancient teachings can speak to us across the centuries,
Yeah.
offering guidance and inspiration for living more meaningful and fulfilling lives.
That's the beauty of a good deep dive.
It is.
You start with this stack of dense material.
Right.
And you end up with this whole new understanding of yourself and the world around you.
Exactly. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn,
Uh-huh.
more to discover,
Yeah.
and that the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom is a lifelong adventure.
So as we kind of wrap up this part of our conversation,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways from this deep dive that our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Well, one key takeaway is the importance of prioritizing holiness.
Okay.
And I know that word can sound a little intimidating,
Yeah.
But it's not about religious rituals.
Right.
It's about cultivating a sense of reverence and intentionality in our lives.
Okay.
Like setting aside time for reflection or meditation, engaging in acts of service.
Right.
Or simply being more mindful of our thoughts, words, and actions.
And let's not forget the power of rest.
Yes. Rest is essential.
It is.
In our go-go-go culture, it's so easy to neglect our need for downtime.
Right.
But Sabbath rest, as we've been discussing, is essential for our well-being.
It is
on every level.
Yeah. Find ways to incorporate regular rest into your routine, whether it's taking a day off each week to unplug or, scheduling time for hobbies.
Right. Anything that brings you joy and helps you recharge.
Yeah.
And, of course, making sure you're getting enough sleep.
Sleep is huge.
Yeah.
Another important takeaway is the principle of generosity.
Absolutely.
Leviticus reminds us that everything we have is a gift.
Right.
And we're called to be good stewards of those gifts.
So true.
This could involve donating to a cause you care about, volunteering your time and talents,
right,
or just being more mindful of our consumption habits.
Exactly. And finally, let's not forget the importance of commitment.
Yeah.
When we make a promise, whether it's to ourselves, to others, or to something greater,
right,
we're making a sacred pact.
It's about integrity.
It is. Let's strive to live lives of integrity, honoring our commitments and striving to be people of our word.
These are all fantastic points.
Thank you.
And as we move into the final part of our dip dive, I encourage our listeners to reflect on how they can incorporate these principles into their daily lives.
Yes.
Remember, living in God's rhythm is not about achieving perfection.
No.
It's about striving to live in greater alignment with our values and with that deeper sense of purpose that resides within each of us.
Beautifully said. It's a process,
Yeah, it's not like we just arrive one day and we're like, oh, okay, I've got it.
Right. It's about showing up each day.
Yeah.
Making those choices.
Yeah.
Aligning ourselves with our values with that sense of purpose.
And trusting that even when we mess up,
yeah,
we can always find our way back.
Exactly. There's always grace. There's always a path back to that rhythm.
That's a good word, grace. It's like this beautiful dance, between striving and surrendering, effort and grace.
It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey.
The messy, beautiful journey.
Exactly.
And you know what? We're not alone in this.
We're not. We're all in this together.
And speaking of being together.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you, our listeners.
Yeah.
What are some of the practices or principles from Leviticus that really speak to you? How are you guys incorporating these teachings into your modern lives?
Right, because we're all on this journey together.
We are.
And there's so much we can learn from each other.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Leviticus, I want to leave you with this thought. Imagine if we approached our lives with the same intentionality and reverence that the Israelites brought to tending that tabernacle lamp. Keeping that inner flame burning bright, even amidst all the craziness of life.
That's a powerful image.
What if we embraced rest, as an act of devotion, a way to honor our need for renewal and connect with that deeper rhythm that sustains us?
I love that.
What if we saw generosity?
Yeah.
Not as a burden, but as a privilege.
Right.
As a way to share the abundance we've been given and make a positive impact on the world.
That's what it's all about.
And what if we approached our commitments with integrity?
Right.
Striving to be people of our word.
Yeah.
Honoring those sacred pacts we make with ourselves and with others.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is. This has been such a rich and rewarding deep dive.
It is.
And I want to thank you all for joining us on this journey of exploration and discovery.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.